Hello there, my name's Richard Lamb. I'm the Training Manager at the UK Climate Impacts Programme, and today I'm here to talk to you about the UK Climate Projections, or UK CP09. The role of UK CIP is to help organisations to assess how they might be affected by climate change so that they can prepare for its impacts. And this is a role that we've been helping organisations with since 1997. And in that time we've developed a number of tools that can help you plan and prepare for whatever our changing climate might throw at you. One of the tools that we've been involved with recently are the UK Climate Projections, or UK CP09. And these represent a collaboration between all of these different organisations and some more who aren't shown on the screen. But because of this collaboration, the projections live on a separate website to UK CIP. So you can see the projections website and the UK CIP website addresses shown on your screen at the moment. So go and have a look at both of them and see what you can see. But why do we need projections? Well, no one knows exactly how the future is going to turn out. But if you're developing a strategy, it's quite important to have some view of what the future might be. So what we've done is we've taken some of the best modelling that we can get in the UK, and we've taken our past observations. We've put in there some IPCC scenarios, so from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and we've also taken expert judgment regarding atmospheric processes. And we've put that all together in the Met Office's supercomputers and come up with UK CP09, which we believe are the most advanced climate scenarios available anywhere in the world at the moment. And that these projections allow us to explore a number of potential futures which you can use and incorporate into your adaptation decisions. Now, the UK climate projections are probabilistic, and that means they're slightly different from what we've had in the past. The last set of projections, UK CIP02, said that there would be this much change. So here, let's say 3 degrees of change for a given location in a given emission scenario. Now, the UK climate projections, UK CP09, are slightly different because they say there will be a range of change. And not only do they say that there will be a range, they also ascribe a probability to that range as well. Now, if we look at this in a little bit more detail, probabilistic data is very different from the sort of probabilities that we were taught when we were at school. At school, if you threw a dice enough times, you could statistically prove that 1 in every 6 throws would be a 3. With UK CP09, we're looking at a different sort of probabilities, which are more akin to setting the odds on a horse race or an insurance premium, where you take into account a range of different events and factors that may have an influence on the outcome, and you set your odds accordingly. When we look at our probability curve, we tend to spend most of our time in UK CP09 looking at this range between 10 and 90%. That's what we call our likely range. Beyond 90% is very unlikely, beyond 10% is very unlikely. But both of them are still plausible, even though they are very unlikely. So we don't ignore them altogether. And for some people, they're the very interesting areas. But for the majority of users, it's that 10 and 90% range which is really important. What we're looking at here then is the range of between 2 and 5 degrees of change. And it's that range which is really important when it comes to sharing what you learn from UK CP09 and planning your responses so that you can have a robust decision across that range rather than going for a targeted 3 or 4 as you'd have got out of the previous projections. So in answer to the question, how hot? When we were looking at UK CP02 and indeed all other climate projections, we'd have got the answer 42. That gives us no information on the uncertainty that surrounds that figure. And whilst it's acceptable to some, it can be misunderstood as though that's a definitive answer. The chances are it was never going to be 42. It might have been 41 or 43. That uncertainty is explicit with UK CP09. And whilst it's much more difficult to work with, if you plan your adaptation response to work across the range, your decisions are going to be that much more robust. The first UK climate scenarios were produced in 1991, and since then they have grown and evolved, as has our knowledge of the climate and atmospheric processes. We also now have increased computing power at our disposal, and perhaps most importantly, people like yourselves, our stakeholders, are putting new requirements on us. It's fair to say that back in 1991 it was rather an academic exercise looking at how we could create scenarios, but now with UK CP09 it's available to anybody with an internet connection. Within UK CP09 there's an awful lot of data for you to look at. There is a grid system, there's about 400 squares, and each one has a range of data available for it. Now, what you mustn't do with this data is take, for example, 4 adjoining squares, take the average temperature, for example, from each of those squares, add them up, divide them by 4, and say that this number is valid and true. The statistical processes that lay behind and underneath the projections don't allow you to do that. So what we've done is we've put some of those grid squares together in administrative regions and in river basins, and there's data available for each of those areas. Now, the administrative regions are the 9 English regions, Wales, Northern Ireland and Scotland, and you'll see that Scotland is divided into 3 climatic zones. The river basins are based on the Water Framework Directive. The marine environment is represented in much more detail in UK CP09 than any of the other previous scenarios. So we have marine information for each of those sea areas, which are based on the DEFRA report charting progress, and there's also information from a storm surge model incorporated into the projections as well. One of the other key features of UK CP09 are the 7 overlapping 30-year time periods, which have replaced the 3 time periods that we used in UK CIP02 and previous projections. 30 years is the minimum amount of time that a climatologist will look at to give some indication of what the climate might be. Any less than 30 years is considered just to be weather. All of the information in UK CP09, UK CIP02 and previous projections are always compared against the same baseline, which was 1961 to 1990. The final piece of the puzzle when you're working with UK CP09 is to decide which emission scenario you want to use. Now, we use 3 scenarios. We label them high, medium and low for convenience sake, but they map to the IPCC SRES scenarios A1FI, A1B and B1. Now, none is any more likely to happen than the other. But in order to look at our potential futures, you need to choose which one you think is most likely. Access to UK CP09 is online, and if you go online you'll find something like 1,700 web pages for you to explore. There are national and regional key findings, 5 reports, the briefing report, trends, land, marine, and a weather generator report. So that's about 1,000 pages of text for you to get your head around if you wish to. And there are something like 7,000 or 8,000 pre-prepared maps and graphs for you to look at. And if that's not enough for you, you could go onto the user interface, which allows you to explore all 25 terabytes of climate change data that's been produced for the UK CP09, which would allow you then to produce something like 2 million different graphical outputs. There is a lot of information in UK CP09, so we've grouped it into 3 different areas, which hopefully will make it easier for you to use. These are key findings, published materials, and the user interface. In key findings, what you'll find are high-level text statements, which give a brief description of how the climate might change. And they're available for the UK as a whole, or for each of those administrative regions that we showed you earlier. So, for example, for the Northwest in the 2080s, under a medium emission scenario, the central estimate of increase in summer mean temperature is 3.7 degrees. So this is at the 50th percentile, so there is a 50% chance it's 3.7 degrees or more, or indeed a 50% chance it's 3.7 degrees or less. We can also say that it's unlikely to be less than 2 degrees and very unlikely to be more than 5.9 degrees, and that's looking at our 10 and 90% level. And if we want to look at our widest range of uncertainty, it's between 1.3 degrees and 7.3 degrees, and that's looking at the 1 to the 99% level. And there are key findings available for each of the regions and the UK as a whole. Looking at the published materials, there are these 5 reports for you to have a look at, and they contain an awful lot of information about how the modelling was done. Most of the results are on the user interface. Besides the reports, and there are 1,000 pages for you to peruse, there are those 7,000 pre-prepared maps and graphs and the 1,700 web pages which contain user guidance, case studies and lots of other useful hints and tips to help you get going with the projections. On the user interface, you'll also find access to the 25 terabytes of data, and that allows you to produce customized maps, PDFs, CDFs, plume plots, joint probability plots, box plots for storm surge, and you can also download the raw data which you could then put into your impacts model or process using a spreadsheet. One of the other things you can get from the user interface is GIS overlays as well, derived from the mapping system. Within UK CP09, there are a lot of products, so we've developed this, the TubeMap. Now, when someone comes to us at UK CIP with a question about the projections, this helps us pinpoint what information is available and what sort of outputs we can get for that. Now, in order to help you understand how to use the TubeMap, we've developed an online learning resource which you can access, which explains how to use this, and it should help save you some time when it comes to producing outputs from the projections. We know that using UK CP09 isn't easy, so we've developed some training and support materials to help you. We run courses on the user interface at beginner and intermediate level, and more courses are being developed all the time, so go and have a look at our website and see what's currently available. We also have e-learning available to everybody to support and enhance your experience of UK CP09. If you go to our e-learning site, not only will you find those resources, but you'll also find the communities of practice where people who are using the projections can get together and share their understanding and best practice. Also on the e-learning site, you'll find a range of webinars and other materials that will help you develop your understanding of the projections. So finally, using UK CP09 is not easy, but we do believe it's worth the effort. In order to adapt, you need to understand your system's sensitivity to climate and your own attitude to risk, and indeed what the climate will do. And probabilistic climate projections, we believe, will allow you to make more robust decisions. So we hope that you'll go and have a look at these websites so that you can use the projections in your decision-making processes. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you online very soon.